Everybody mute your mics.
This episode of the Lions Den was brought to you by Common Sense. I can explain it to you, but I can't understand it for you.
Welcome to the Lions Den. 144 men on the rise again.
Yes.
And you better show some intellect. That'll be the only way a nigga ever get respect. For real? Welcome to the Lions Den. 144 men on the rise again.
Yes.
And you better show some intellect. That'll be the only way a nigga ever get respect. To Jeremiah. Finna bring the fire. Cause on the second turn, you gon' crucify the Messiah. Roaring like a lion instead of being defiant. You better come together and try to form an alliance. Like Jesus minister, new heavyweight champ. Finna turn the lights on instead of using a lamp. They try to keep up with us, but they leg is catching a cramp. Hebrew Israelites, now that's the name of the camp. That's a divine prospect. Shout out to the brother Ron. When they see the Hebrews, other ideologies run. Then apologies come, forever calling us dumb. Bringing all of the facts and leave them silent and numb. So Kwam Yasha Allah, call up Danya Allah. We got no problem, tell the truth and we follow. Got skilled debaters like Michael Edwards. We never go run, PowerPoint, we bring the lecture. Welcome to the Lions Den. 144 men on the rise again.
Yes.
And you better show some intellect. That'll be the only way a nigga ever get respect. For real? Welcome to the Lions Den. 144 men on the rise again.
Yes.
And you better show some intellect. That'll be the only way a nigga ever get respect. See you talking down when you're doing your interviews. We got a multitude of knowledge, so how could we lose? Used to be in the game, so I give them the blues. Welcome to the Lions Den. We deep when we face you. I know it's hard to understand your ancestors was a slave, but challenging biblical knowledge, homie, we ain't
I know myself.
I know you really hear me. You're standing right here. Look at me, king. Yeah, you gon' get this work. When the father don't spend his time, that mean he fit this curve. Be the people like it or not. Take a look at your block. The rise of AOC, Masharai, Yasha'Allah, cause we got it on lock. Identified through our conditions. Try to label us African without permission. Never laying down, tapping out, no submission. See us in the streets every day, we on a mission. Welcome to the Lions Den. 144 men on the rise again.
Yes.
And you better show some intellect. That'll be the only way a nigga ever get respect. For real? Welcome to the Lions Den. 144 men on the rise again.
Yes.
And you better show some intellect. That'll be the only way a nigga ever get respect. For real? We get a certain type of treatment in the conscious community. We get a certain type of treatment in the conscious community in which you are at the forefront of, Sarnetta. So what we're saying is, if we want to have a dialogue and discussion about what is good for black people and what should we be dealing with within our community, in our faith, man, we wanted to have an intelligent conversation.
So why don't you invite me on your show, one-on-one, me and you?
We can set that up. That's not a problem.
If you smell what the rock is cooking. The rock says, the rock says.
We back, man. We back. It's about to go down here in the Lions Den, man. This is another big one, right? We've been waiting diligently for the number one contender to get back in the ring, James Cassel. We got a new brother on the scene by the name of Udo. I'm excited to see what this brother's gonna bring to the table because we got a huge mountain to climb. But we're not gonna count our eggs before they hatch. Yo, 7,000, man. Talk to us, family.
Hey, shalom. Welcome to the Lions Den Debate League tournament, man. We've been on fire all day, and hey, ain't no putting this fire out till this debate is over with. Other than that, we stand blazing. We stand on fire, man. We got another slobberknocker coming up. We got James Cassel versus the new brother, the new lion in the den, Udo. Interesting topic, bro. I can't wait to sit back and just hear the information, man. I'm just sitting back chilling. Other than that, man, hey, I'm ready to get this started. Shalom.
All right, man. So it's going down here in the Lion's Den, man. It's going down, right? Truth personified, right? We're trying to take this scholarship to another level, man. It's imperative that we do so. So it's a lot of weight upon the judges, right? This is what they're fighting for. They fight for this, right? The Lions Den Debate League Championship, man. Right? So it's about to go down. Here's how it's going to go down. 3 15-minute rounds, right? Then there's going to be a question and answer segment, right? Where each debater will be able to pose a question, and the debater has 2 minutes to answer the question. Then we're going to the judges. Right before we go to the judges, we want you all that are watching, we want you to be able to cast your vote. All right? We want this thing to be definitely an interactive platform. But at the end of the day, it's the judges that makes the final decision, and you either win or go home. All right? Ain't no negotiations. We ain't cutting no deals. We ain't doing none of that. Win or go home. That's it, man. All right? Everything's in the judges' hands. And again, we got new judges, man. Right? So now I want to allow the first. Who's going first? James Cassel, you say you going first?
Yeah, because I'm the affirmative side.
Okay, no sweat. All right, so
hey Jeremiah, before you go, can the 2 judges on the panel introduce themselves real quick? And we got 1 judge whose phone is not acting right, compatible with StreamYard. So he's in the audience. He is listening in. Terry Whitfield, he will be calling in with his decision. I just want to let y'all know. So we got 2 more judges on the panel. Just let them introduce themselves and we can get it moving. Go ahead.
Shalom. It's Brother Yashar, a.k.a. The Lion. It's my first time being a judge. Just want to give all praise and glory to the Most High, Yahweh Shai. Blessed to be on the show. Blessed to be in the Lion's Den. I'm ready for these brothers to get it in. You know, I was making some jokes with my brothers, but, you know, I just get them spirits up, get that lion come out of them. Let's get it on.
Hey, Shalom, Duwop, Sabers. I'm just here to get the knowledge, man. I'm going to debate, like, go through it, you know what I mean? Listen to the context, you know what I mean? See who got an understanding of what it is they putting out. And at the end of the day, you know what I mean? Whoever come with the best argument gonna win this. My name is Google the Lion on Facebook is Original Thought spelled backwards.
Well, I've got news for you. Mother Nature did create several.
All right, family. So now we're gonna jump straight into it, man. James Cassel, go ahead and introduce yourself. Let me know when you're ready to start your time, and I'll start it then.
Okay, soon as my screen share, go ahead and start the time. But first, I want to give all praise and honor to the Most High in the name of His only begotten. And I want everyone to pay much attention here because it's going to be a lot to learn. So let me go ahead and get ready to share my screen.
Yeah, man, somebody told me you was from Massachusetts, man. You want to clear up the rumors, man, about where you from, brother?
Oh, man, I'm from H-Town. I am here. You feel me?
Yeah.
All right, let me know when my screen up and showing.
It's up.
I don't see. All I see is black. All right, now we good. All right, I'm ready to go.
All right, your time starts now.
All right, this right here, this is just round 1, so I'm gonna open up with the history on the people of Nigeria, right? Histories of the people of Nigeria, origins of Nigerian peoples. For the most part, These stories appear in two forms. On the one hand, these stories deal with the origins of different people from time when the world was created. These types of stories set the origin of the human race itself within the context of these different groups. On the other hand, these stories allude to migration by groups from one or more parts of the world to either their former or present location. All right, and this book right here is called Nigeria by Toyin Falola. He's a teacher over at the University of Austin. He's the he's the chairperson of the humanities and he's won the distinguished teaching honor as professor at UT. And this book has been peer reviewed. All right, this is some of his. That's a picture of him, of course, and here's some of his credentials, so everybody can see that this man knows what he's talking about. He's one of the foremost authorities on Nigerian history. All right, now we're going to move on to the Igbo history and origin by N. Okoye and a few other scholars. And I'm only focusing on the outside origin. There is an aboriginal motif, but like I said, I'm just going to focus on the outside origin because that's who we're talking about. According to Chukwuwama, Mr. Innocent Okuri gave a new dimension to the history of the origin of the Igbo people. Okuri is of the view that the Igbo people are the Jews who fled from Israel following the persecution of the Israelites by the Assyrians. They moved southwards through Hebron and Beersheba and arrived in Cairo in 710 BCE. They, the Igbo, soon departed Egypt and journeyed on to their present habitat, where they were joined by other exiles of Jewish province of Habatia, called the Afriki Donisis, or present-day Afriques. The Igbo and Afik arrived first in Nigeria in 638 BCE after the exile of the Israelites in 710 BCE. The entire Igbo never migrated in one day. The Igbo who arrived very early were the Iri group, after Iri, the fifth son of Gad in Genesis 46 and 16, and the Arab group after Erodi, the son of Gad in Genesis 46 and 16. So what I'm showing here is that even though there's aboriginal people that were already there in the land, there was migrations of new people coming in, and they have this in their oral tradition. This scholar, Alaizi, held that the Igbo in Nigeria are made up of Hebrew exiles from different tribes of Israel, and not from a particular tribe or a place like Shekinibo. He came up with the tribal origins of many important Igbo towns. From the tribe of Iri, we have Alogu-Iri, Ora-Iri, Umulu-Iri, Ebi-Iri, Owu-Iri, and so forth. From the tribe of Erodi, we have the Aro or the Orochukwu, Erodi, Izu, Ogu. From Atim, we have Etim. From Zebulon, the sixth son of Jacob, or the father of the tribe of Zebulon, Genesis 46 and 14, we have Ozubu. From Ahab, we derive from King Ahab of the tribe of Judah, 1 Kings 19 and 1. And it just goes on and on and on with this list, but I ain't trying to take up too much time. Many Igbo scholars are of the view that the Igbo people are from the Jews. Oba Abulu in 1981, Chukuma, Oriza, Oraka, Eziala, and so on and so forth, are of the view of the above. These scholars, however, could not agree on the exact places of the origin in Israel. Eza Allah favors Shekinibo. This view has been contested against so radically by the ethno-linguists who support his criticism with biblical quotations and dates. So a lot of this is just going through and showing that, yes, it was some people that came during the Assyrian exile, but they came in waves. You know, they flowed in waves. This right here is specifically talking about the tribe of Gad. This is the Obu Gad, right? A sacred temple of mortality and brotherhood of Ogulu-Iri Kingdom. This is from the International Journey of Modern Education Research, Volume 3, Number 6, page 52 through 59. Of course, it was published in 2017. Origin and migration. The origin of Olugu-Iri would be linked to the migration of the Igbo race to the present-day Nigeria as a nation who are among the Hebrew patriarchs from Mesopotamia to their present homeland in Palestine. Commenting on the history of the Israelites, again agrees that it is true that the position taken above, which is one that is widely held today, has been vigorously contested in recent years by certain scholars who maintain that the patriarchal narratives are more or less imaginative literary creations of a much later date than the early monarchy or even the exilic period, with no applicable steam of oral tradition behind them, and without real historiographical intention or historical worth. Erie and his entourage continue their migration southward until they finally settle at the place known to us today as Olugu Erie, the ancestral home of the Igbo, around 1303 BCE. So in this story, they say Erie even came there before they left from Egypt during Exodus. The Obu Gad, this is Gad's ceremonial place, is apparently visible, and this remains an epicenter for global tourism site in the Lugu Erie town of Anambra State till this date. Commenting on the significance of the place, of the sacred place, argues that this place is very paramount because this is at the point that Erie had a divine revelation that they had reached their ordained place of settlement. Now I'm gonna skip ahead to the last paragraph there. This depiction of Olugu Erie has a strong belief in the existence of one God, the creator of all things, whom they call Chukwuwu, the supreme being. But ancestor worship is also practiced here. The peoples offer sacrifices. And I'm gonna move on because I can't really see that part of the screen. All right, this right here, we're gonna jump on to the Igbo people. The histories of the people of Nigeria, origin of the Yoruba peoples. This is still dealing with Toyin Falola's book. And then we're on page 26 through 31. Fine quality work abound in the history of the Yoruba. Ile-Ife is largely regarded as the origin and source and cradle of the Yoruba people. In fact, Yoruba history, or the history of any group in Yoruba land, cannot be written without situating it within the larger history of Ile-Ife. It is indisputably recognized as the oldest dynastic state formed by the Yoruba people. Sabara Bibaku suggests that Ile-Ife might have been founded between 700 and 1100 AD. Jeffrey, an archaeologist, believes the city must have flourished as an urban center around the 11th century AD. Among Yoruba peoples of southwestern origin of Nigeria, two distinct stories are told about their origins. One account claims God, called Olodumare in the Yoruba language, actually created humans in heaven and commissioned them to go and establish and populate the world. Different variants of the account exist. In one variant, Olodumare made the heavens, human, and other celestial beings, as well as the earth. Olodumare commanded a band of celestial beings, human, and divinities to descend from heaven on a spider web. The more historical account from Sultan Bello of Sokoto claims that the Yoruba spring from Oduduwa, the son of Lamurudu, one of the kings of Mecca. In this account, the Yoruba people have either migrated from Mecca or somewhere in the Arabian Peninsula as a result of religious persecution. The people relapsed into idolatry and were expelled from Mecca. At the head of them was Oduduwa, the son of Lamarudu, who led the people fleeing Mecca. After a 90-day journey, they reached Ile-Ife and settled there. And this part right here is very important because it's going to set up the context of realizing that there was indigenous people already there when they came. At Ile-Ife, Oduduwa and his group met 13 autonomous groups. These groups fought a prolonged battle that lasted 30 years. Unable to conquer these 13 autonomous groups, Oduduwa and his people were eventually accepted and incorporated into Ile-Ife. It was believed that Oduduwa, due to statesmanship, advanced military prowess, emerged as first among equals. Their willingness to compromise could also be the use of weapons, military strategy, and statecraft. Abundance of evidence exists in Yoruba oral history that the Aborigines fought the aggressors for about 2 generations until the time of Moremi, undoubtedly the most famous of the palace queens. According to Ife tradition, the 13 autonomous states that were in existence at the time before Oduduwa and the autonomous groups of the Igbo. So it's this right here story also applies to the Igbo. That's why I didn't read it in their tradition, because they also have the same thing. All right. The Oyo-Ife tradition. On the basis of comparative studies between dynastic traditions of the Oyo Yoruba and ancient Near East history, the present article argues that Yoruba traditions of prominence claiming immigration from the Near East are basically correct. According to Oyo Yoruba traditions, the ancestral Yoruba saw the Assyrian conquest of the Israelite kingdom from the 9th and 8th centuries BCE from the perspective of the Israelites. After the fall of Samaria in 722, they were deported to eastern Syria and adopted the ruling Assyrian kings as their own. The collapse of the Assyrian Empire is, however, mainly seen through the eyes of the Babylonian conquerors of Nineveh in 612. The second shift of perspective reflects the disillusionment of Israelites and Babylonian deportees from Syrio-Palestine toward the Assyrian oppressors. After the defeat of the Egypto-Assyrian forces at Carchemish in Syria in 605, numerous deportees followed the fleeing Egypto-Assyrian troops to the Nile Valley before continuing their migration to sub-Saharan Africa. And this is from Origin of the Yoruba, The Lost Tribes of Israel by Derek Lane, published in Anthropos 106. And this was published in 2011 on page 579 through 559. Oyo-Ife, the dying and rising god. Behind the Yoruba legend of origin, we perceive the more complex Ife mythology involved a remote high god, Olodumare, and his actignastic sons, Oduduwa and Obatala. All three deities participate in one way or another in the process of creating the world, which is supposed to have taken place in Ife. The creation myth of Ife can be shown to closely relate to the Baal cycle of Ugarit. If anybody knows this, this is up in the Phoenician territory. Ugarit is. And anybody who reads the Bible know about Baal. On the legendary level, clear comparisons exist between the house's tradition and origin and the biblical genealogies of tribes, both distinguishing between the chosen people descending from the legal wife and the underprivileged sons descending from the slave concubine. According to Ife mythology, the same pattern is found in the groupings of the deities in the two major parties, Oduduwa and Obatala, two figures corresponding to Ishmael and Isaac/Jacob. In sharp comparison to each other, there are those clans claiming descent from deities of the netherworld, and those clans deriving their descent from deities of the underworld. It is in this intermediate level of two different categories of deities which tells us to understand the social implications of the Canaanite mythology and showed Israelite legend, since each deity is worshipped exclusively by the members of the specific clan attached to them, which is pretty much showing that there's a patrilineal lineage between these separate tribes that they're relating and saying that it relates back to Isaac and Jacob or to Ishmael, which may be in light of, Ishmaelites coming in around this time doing Oyo-Ife and conquering with Islam. With respect to the possible comparisons between African and Shemitic phenomena, the New Year festival is the most significant link between Yoruba culture of the tropic rainforest and Canaanite culture of northern Africa. Because what's important to notice is that if we're talking about the northern tribes of Israel, according to their own history, they fell away from practicing the ways of the Most High and start following after the ways of the Canaanites. So if they flee and leave to another land, they're going to bring them Canaanite practices with them. That's just common sense. Besides the 6 prominent deities of the Itapa festival, all with precise Canaanite equivalents, a number of structural parallels between the Itapa festival and Ife and the Shemitic New Year festival provide further evidence for the existence of a common cultural pattern extending from Phoenician North Africa to Hausa Yoruba in West Africa. The Itapa festival is a New Year festival centered on death, a 3-day stay in the netherworld, and the resurrection of the God of creation on the 4th day. This festival scheme appears to be widely followed in the Shemitic world. In different ways, it has survived in the Easter celebrations of Christ and the Hajj ceremonies of Muslims. The Itapa festival consists of the cult dramatic representation of a divine conflict between a god of creation and a god of death. For both deities, it is their descent groups or clans, and in particular their specific cult groups, that organize the festival. On the mythological level, the same conflict is described by the Baal cycle of Ugarit. Even though the cult groups of Obatala and Obamiri are organizers of the Itapa festival, most of the other cults of the Ifa belong to 2 major cult parties led by the high priest of Obatala and the high priest of Oduduwa. Also participate in the festivals. In Ugarit, a similar dualistic antagonism exists in the mythological opposition between the gods of the circle of Baal and the sons of Asherah. The 4th similarity. Although most of the festival celebrations primarily involve the cult groups, the king and the palace staff of Ife have important roles in the festival. The members of 2 of the 3 palace chambers are the intermediaries between the 2 antagonistic cult parties and the king. Their leaders provide the ceremonial materials, and they represent the cult in important cult dramatic actions outside the palace. In particular, the leader.
All right, Salah, James. I didn't give you a 1 minute warning, but you had 15 minutes, man.
Okay, no problem. We can close up right.
My apologies, bro.
It's all good.
All right. Woo! That boy James ain't playing no games with the first round, man. Came out swinging, right? Now listen, man. Source up, man. Source up, right? Udo, are you ready?
Come on, bro.
You ready?
Yeah, so basically, can you hear me?
Yeah.
You can hear me?
I can hear you.
All right, great.
Turn your camera on, brother.
Great.
There you go. All right.
Yeah. All right. So basically, what we got here is a debate on whether or not African Americans descend genetically from the Hebrews. Now, the man that went first, he gave appeals that trying to imply that West and Central Africa are people like the Igbo, people in Nigeria and around in those areas, right? Embraced Hebrewism, or groups of Hebrews came in to those areas, and he named a couple of different periods and times, and he gave some authors, but he didn't show any material culture from here or there. He didn't show material culture from the so-called ancients, from anything in the ancient world. He didn't show any material culture from after the colonial or before the colonial world, going back into the classical world. Just no material culture. The argument is based off oral history and pretty much oral history alone, but he has no lineage of where that oral history came from. And I would advise all my brothers and sisters to beware of all oral history that doesn't designate the men who have given that oral history, right? And so, if this man had a line of oral history going back, then some people might think it more plausible to believe in that, right? And there might be more justification in that. And so what I'm going to do is we're going to look at material culture from the ancient world and from the classic modern world, and to get a look at, this identity of who these Hebrews were. You know, now he mentioned the ball cycle of Ugarit and using that as evidence of Hebrews, and the cultural patterns that he claims exist at these different places. But at the same time, he disregards, other Canaanite cultures. And I mean, it almost seems like he's a little bit confused on whether or not he wants to use Canaanites as the Hebrews or not, and wants to use that the relatable cultures in that area, as evidence. But he doesn't show you any of the culture itself. He doesn't show you. He doesn't show you. I mean, he almost makes the claim that they were there. They came. He mentions all these different ways, but he doesn't show you material culture and then new culture being added to the culture. Or he doesn't even show you. He doesn't show you anything. Period. But he doesn't show you culture, material culture from one, and he doesn't even show you the resemblances from the other. And he doesn't show you them in situ. He doesn't show you them where they were found or anything like that. There's no. He's not going to show you any graves, right, of any Hebrews in West and Central Africa. He's not. He's not going to show you any places of ancient worship there for Hebrews, right? I mean, he hasn't even showed you any places elsewhere of these Hebrews, right? I mean, there's just no material culture that's really shown. He's basing this off of oral history. But now, this is where I go. I'm gonna jump into when did this argument of Black African Americans, or whatever misnomer you want to use to speak of people of the diaspora here in America, when did they start making these claims about being, related to these Hebrews? And for that, we got to go back. Yes. Hold on. For that, we got to go back to the 1900s, where these ideas were first being seeded and was sprouted to mainly the East Coast and the mecca of it all, of Black nationalism, because that's what we're really talking about, is Black nationalism. The mecca of it, and which is said to be New York, right? Not to say that there ain't other hot spots or bedrocks of it in other places. But when we do that, when we look at this argument, what I'm saying, of African Americans being, Hebrews, descended from the Hebrews, it first started out as a spiritual connection. The first people to bring this belief, as I'm going to show you, is people who believe in being a spiritual people first, and then later on, others, you could call them followers, who would grow into their own or what have you. People associated in this Milu took it a step further and claimed to be the skin and bones of the patriarchs, and not just the spiritual, what I'm saying, not just the spiritual connection. I mean, the actual physical, like my great granddaddy is Moses type, what I'm saying? And so I'm not arguing on whether or not African Americans are the spiritual Hebrews or anything of the sort. I'm arguing against there being evidence to prove that African Americans are skin and bones of these patriarchs that we first became familiar with in the Bible and read associated stories and such around. And so that's what I'm gonna get into in these next rounds. We're gonna look at some testimony. We're gonna look at records, right? We're gonna look at historic records in the United States, outside. We're gonna look at ancient records. We're gonna look at, what I'm saying. We're We should have the time to check out some pottery, some other material culture. You know what I'm saying? Of these people, and get a better idea about who these people were. But one thing's for sure is that all this came about, all this discovery of self-identification came about because of, you know what I'm saying, the transatlantic. So, I mean, there's no doubt that African Americans here in America are heavily West Central African. Um, those are our roots. Those are generally our roots, right? And so much miseducation over the time, you know, has concealed our identity. But we're going to look at actual testimony of the first people to profess these beliefs in America, right? In actual history documented here, and before we got this more current, before we had this more current trends of Igbo, claims to Hebrew. Now, even those claims, people, and as you see in my man's testimony, people aren't sure whether to claim that Igbos were always Hebrews or whether it was introduced later. They don't know whether to take all the ancient information and to twist that to fit Hebrewism or just look at it from them coming at a later date. And, but but it's important that if you're going to base your opinion on oral history, my judges I'm speaking to right now, if you're going to base all your opinion on oral history and on material culture and stuff like that, then it's good to have that lineage of where that oral history is coming from down to from the beginning, right? Not just from 1996, right? But the oldest possible. You want the oldest, right? But and we're gonna go back, like I said, to 1900s, where this black nationalism really started to kick off, and these ideas popped off. That's where we're gonna go with the next.
So you when you get into some material cultures. How much time I got left so I know how much I can expand right here. Somebody give me an idea how much time I have. So if I got a couple of minutes, I'm gonna keep going with some stuff, but I ain't been timing.
So I think you probably it is 10 minutes or 15
Is that
minutes.
possible?
It's 10 minutes or 15 minutes.
Yo,
It's
I,
it's
hey,
minute.
brother, you got 6 more minutes.
Oh, right, yeah.
I got 6 more. Okay, well, we're just gonna jump right into this right here then. All right, because I mean, a lot of people are familiar with a lot of these groups nowadays that's getting real popular, getting a lot of publicity, right? But not a lot of people are familiar with, their roots. And then so, like when you speak about groups like, you know, USUP, the Israel School of Universal Practice Knowledge, or the commandment keepers and the African Hebrew Israelites. It's important to know, what this is rooted in. And then so, right here, I'm gonna start off. I'm gonna go into these archives right here if I can get into this tab. And man, this archives right here is from the New York Public Library. And let me get into this real quick. Affiliated with the collections of Schomburg Center for Research and Black Culture. If anyone's familiar with that or from the New York or East Coast area, let me see if I can get into this real quick. We're gonna come back to that. We're gonna come back to that. I'm having problems getting into this, so we're gonna bump to this Black History now, and we're gonna look at a prominent figure that's in this movement. Not necessarily the first, but most people consider him to be the first one to say that the black man is from genetically from the tribes of the Bible, and that's Arnold Josiah.
Hey, brother, we can't hear you, man.
You say you can't hear me?
We hear you now. Go ahead.
All right. So getting into the milieu of this black nationalism, and we look at a figure like Arnold Josiah Ford, right? Who many believe was overshadowed, by Marcus Garvey. Being that Josiah Ford was here before Garvey, but though Garvey got a lot of the credit for this black nationalism movement. And here we go right here on this Black History.now. It speaks about Arnold Josiah's involvement, right, during this era. And if you ask a lot of these brothers from a lot of these groups, they espouse Arnold Josiah Ford to be one of the patriarchs, right? He's the dude, most are familiar with him involved as a musician with Marcus Garvey and his writing of the universal Ethiopian flag and such. And, other scholars have pointed out, his controversy with Garvey and how him and Garvey fell out. But this is one of the pillars behind this ideology of the black man here in America being descended from the blood and bones of the Hebrews, right? Now,
2 minutes remaining.
You said what?
2 minutes.
2 minutes.
2 minutes.
All right. Now, some call him, they say he's the first black rabbi here in America. That would be worth mentioning if you wanted to speak about Hebrew. Another rabbi they also mention is Arthur Wentworth Matthew, right? And so these gentlemen were all involved in this process that actually took, some cats back to Africa. They went back to Liberia. It then ended up actually going back to the so-called motherland, right? Temporary visas, right? So they were a part of some prominent movements in the past, and all of it was based around, this want or desire to establish, black nationalism. All right. There wasn't no actual evidence. There wasn't no lineage, no line of people you could name or to connect one's physical self to these other people. But you had people who were studying under Josiah Ford and these others, right, who used him as their connection, right? That was their connection, right?
And
so it was.
All right. That was Brother Udo's first round. He said his premise. He's saying that he wants to see some kind of bloodline. You hear what I'm saying? This is what this brother is saying, man. He needs to see some genetics. He said that a lot of these brothers have took to this idea by Josiah Ford. This is what this brother is bringing to the table. All right. The brother Jeremiah, he went and got him something to eat, so I'm gonna take over till you get back. Now, what we're gonna do? We're gonna have the brother James Cassel come on in his second round, top of the second. Hopefully he can answer a few of Udo's questions, and maybe both of them can really get to the point about who is this Hebrew Israelite? Are they African American? That's what we want to know. James Cassel, your time starts as soon as your lips get to moving.
All right, all praise. First thing, I'm gonna go over a couple things he said, then I'm gonna get back to my presentation. Number one, the oral history comes from the priest. That's why I meant the priest of Oluguiri. That's why I mentioned the high priest of Obatala, so on and so forth. Bro, this is a comprehensive presentation. The first round was just history. You want to see that material culture? You got to see it right now. And there's no confusion regarding whether I think they Canaanites or not. It is a matter of the Israelites' history that they fell away to Canaanite practices. And the last thing I'll say, yeah, I didn't show you a picture, but I talked about the sacred temple of Opal God. I gave you several locations that come from Hebrew names, and I used the lineage of Gad through his son Eri and his son Arodi. All right, let me get to sharing my screen again. Oh, and one more thing I'll say while this loading up. The whole premise of his first round seems to be based on what we call a genetic fallacy. He's going to the origins of how we came to in America, or some of us came to in America to know that we're Israelites, instead of dealing with the true or falsehood of the position. Okay, but back in here, I'm gonna start back in history, then we're gonna go into the archaeology. This right here is from the Jewish Encyclopedia. According to 9th century Jewish traveler Eldad ben Mali, or Eldad the Danite, could somebody mute their mic? The Igbo Bene Israel may be descendants of members of several of the lost tribes of Israel. He contended that the Jews of Africa came from the tribes of Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher, who had fled the land of Israel so not to participate in the civil war between Judah and Israel during the time of Jeroboam's succession and reign over the northern kingdom between 922 and 901 BCE. Eldad contended that these Jews originally settled in Havilah, beyond the rivers of Ethiopia. With them, they had a copy of the Tanakh, less the books of Esther and Lamentations, which makes sense because they left before that. These Jews had no knowledge of the Mishnah or the Babylonian Talmud, but had devised their own Talmudic tradition in which all the laws were credited to Yehoshua ben Nun, who received them from Moses. One theory holds that the ancient Hebrews and later ancient Israelite migrate west from the Arabian Peninsula through Egypt, Ethiopia, Kenya, and Sudan. No one is certain when ancient Hebrews first migrated from the Middle East and settled in West Africa. It is thought that they began to arrive before 202 BCE, the date associated with the arrival of the iron-working civilizations of West Africa, like the Nope. The brother said he wanted to see changes in culture. Next page. All right. Further evidence of the Syrian Babylonian migration. All right, this is from Herodotus. He wrote this: Necho, king of Egypt, first discovered this, and made it known when he had finished digging the canal which leads from the Nile to the Arabian Gulf. He sent Phoenician ships instructing them to sail on a voyage past the Pillars of Hercules until they returned into the northern sea, and so to Egypt. So he pretty much had them circumnavigate all of Africa. The Carthaginians tell us that they traded with a race of men that, it should say, lived in a part of Libya beyond the Pillars of Hercules. On reaching this country, they unloaded their goods, arranged them tidily along the beach, and then returning to their boat, raised smoke. Seeing the smoke, the natives come down to the beach, place on the ground a certain quantity of gold, and if the people from Carthage think it's a fair price, they collect the gold and go away. And it goes on to talk about that if they didn't think it was a fair price, they would leave the gold, and then the natives would come back out, put more gold out there, and then they would take the gold and go, and then the deal is done. In the Periplus of Hanno the Navigator, this is Codex Palatinus, it should say Gracious, 398. In this story, Hanno the Navigator tells a story about how Carthage was overflowing with an influx from Phoenicia, and this was during around the time of the Assyrian conquest. So what Carthage ended up doing was sending boats around Africa to the west coast of Africa to populate that region.
Hey, brother James, let me stop your clock, brother. You know you're not sharing your screen.
Oh, it
And
said
Udo,
on my side. I am.
yeah, Udo, you need to maybe mute your mic, brother. All right.
Okay, let me stop sharing it.
Yeah, I'll stop your time. Go ahead.
All right, good, because we getting in around 2 of it anyway of my presentation.
All right, go ahead, brother.
Tell me when you can see it.
We still waiting.
Okay. How much time I got while it's paused?
You got to you had at 8:30. You had at 8:28, but I'm gonna stop your time. You had at 8:30.
Can you see my screen now?
Nah.
It say it's up.
We can't see. Oh, we see you. That's all we see.
Let me see if I stop showing myself. Will it work?
Yeah, James. I only see you. We don't see your screen.
No problem. I'm seeing if I stop showing myself, will it show? Well, I'm glad I ain't do nothing crazy on here while y'all wasn't when I thought y'all wasn't looking. It's still not showing?
Nope.
Nah, it's just showing that you're not showing your face. That's it.
Oh man, this is crazy.
Hey, brother, I don't have no problem with the screen not showing. As long as you can list your sources to me, I can care whether I see that. I can look the sources up. That's just me. I write my stuff down, so that's how I do it, man. But I do use a PowerPoint, but also I write it down just in case you do have technical difficulties.
Okay, if it don't pop up this time, I'm just gonna go ahead and move forward and let you know I'm ready. Move forward.
Man, go on flow with it, bro.
All right, cool. I'm just gonna go ahead and move forward. All right, man, because there's a lot of artifacts I want y'all to see. Because the brother say I ain't showing no material culture, man, and this is full of the material culture. But I will say this: if y'all go over, oh, is it showing now?
Yeah,
if
there you go.
Over to Maccabees TV, y'all can watch.
Yeah, now you good. Now you good.
All right, let me get it up all the way, and then we'll start the time again.
All right, I'm gonna stop your time. Like so, you got to 8:31 now.
Come on, screen. I'm gonna try to rush through it. All right, this right here, round 2. Let me set this up right so it don't jump ahead of me. All right, links to Israel. This is where we're dealing with material culture. Everyone can see right there that artifact. Terracotta imagery in Israel and Judah under the late monarchy, 925 to 586 BCE. First, there was a marked tendency to isolate these artifacts from other types of terracotta within the repertoire of which they belong, most notably the male horse riders. Their appearance is most remarkable, both on the account of the novelty of the subject at the time and the relative rarity of male equestrian terracottas in the Near East at all times. I mean, even if you look at many places in the world during this time period, especially, you rarely find any terracotta of men riding horses. All right. And the source to that was Idols of the People, miniature images of clay in the ancient Near East, pages 47 through 48 at Oxford University. And then on this photo right here, you're seeing what happened. This happened relatively recently. There was a storm in Israel that unearthed these ancient horse figurines. And as you can see, that they're developing more. They're becoming more distinctive. They have more characteristics to them than the original one. The second zoomorphic figurine is a small, solid, less meticulous crafted piece with traces of a rider or a pack on his back and applied blinkers on his head. This most likely also depicts a horse. To some extent, it is reminiscent of the horse figurines common in Judah during the Iron Age, 8th century through 6th century BCE, although it is more detailed and less crude. It might be considered a forerunner of the prevalent Iron B2 Judite horse figurines. This is from terracotta figurines from the Iron Age 2 Temple of Mosa, Judah, published by the Association of Choroplastic Studies on the 2nd of January 2010. And this right here is the image of it. Right here you can see where the feet are on it, but you can't really see the rider or any depiction of the rider. All right, more links to Israel. This is going to be the only biblical time I use a biblical source here. This right here comes from 1 Samuel 19 and 13. This is from when Michal was hiding David from her father who wanted to kill him. It says that Michal took an image and laid it in the bed and put a pillow of goat's hair for its bolster and covered it with a cloth. Now, the term that's used there for household item is the same term that's used for household idol or teraphim. Moving on, one of the dominant messages that emerged from the lectures is how uncertain everything is. There are several possibilities about the function of the figurines in society, including simply as children's toys, even though a religious purpose is at the top of the list. The one fact that seems to be most certain is that the figurines cease in all areas of Israel after the exile. And this is from Ethnicity and the Myth of the Reborn Nation, Investigations in the Collective Identity, Monotheism, and the Use of Figurines in the Yahoo during the Achaemenid period. This was published in the 2nd December 2014. All right, Daima culture. This is another distinct culture that pops up, which the brother said he wants. The Daima culture describes a small clay animal figurines that were first discovered by archaeologists at a mound in Daima, a village in the northwestern region of Borno, south of Lake Chad. These figurines were believed to have been made by a population of Neolithic herdsmen around the 6th century BCE. So it disappears in Israel, but it's popping up here. Although it is named after Daima, where it was first discovered, this material culture is not limited to Daima and the Lake Chad areas alone. Thousands of them have also been excavated in Jos, Tajina, Ise, Oyo-Ife of the Oyo state, which is the main focus, among other places. In addition to this, entire continent is saturated with these clay figurines, while those excavated at Daima have been radiocarbon dated to about 400 BCE. And when you look in other places, they come much later than this. All right, Note culture. This is from 900 BCE to 200 Common Era. Comprising of essentially life-size terracotta, like the one that Milka used to act like David. The Note culture, which is believed to have flourished between 900 and 200 BCE, first found in Note village, a village near Jos, just like the last figurines were found in central Nigeria. At its epoch, it was a highly sophisticated culture that produced life-size, hollow-shaped terracotta with coiled human heads and bodies. These right here, images side by side. You see the primitive one on the left that we find in Israel, and now you see the one on the right from the Note culture, both rare specimens in the ancient world of equestrian males riding horses. These are further images. On the left, you got the male Note. On the right, you got a female Note. Historians are of the opinion that the Note tradition of plastic art is in a loose way ancestral to medieval sculpture tradition of Igala, Nupe, Yoruba, and Igbo. And three of those there are related to the Igbo, so it applies to the Yoruba and the Igbo. This is Africa in the Iron Age, 500 BC to 1400 AD, Cambridge University Press. This one I'll only focus on the right side right now. On page 31 of Igbo Hebrew Exiles from Israel, reprinting Amazing Facts and Revelations by Ph.D. D.O. Alaizi, Paleo-Hebrew script has been found in various places in the Igbo territories of Nigeria. Drawings like that of the Magen David, Star of David, have been found in various places in Igbo land prior to the missionary arrival to Nigeria. So missionaries ain't influenced them this way. That's been there. There is a stone throne of Obu Gad with confirmed Paleo-Hebrew inscription at the foot of the throne, which indicates that the throne was constructed in the honor of Gad. There are also an onyx stone found in Igbo land with the Paleo-Hebrew word Gad on it. So if you want lineage, that's lineage right there. The links to Carthage. While assessing the evidence from Note cultures, Well, I'm gonna summarize this real quick. Pretty much is what it's saying is it's showing that Carthage was a metallurgy civilization well before the Note culture, but Carthage also had trade going down into West Africa, into the Saharan regions like that, which they're hypothesizing was what gave the influence to the Note culture to start the metallurgy. And this is from Dynamics of the Metalworking's Tradition in West Africa. All right, this right here is the analysis of the cranials of Delaware and multiple discriminant functions. And I'm gonna get to the main point. This is Soyakita. He's a renowned study of this. He graduated from Howard University. He's went on to many universities. He was taught by Larry Angel of the Smithsonian Institute. So the man is well accredited. This is some of his credentials right here. I'm gonna get to the main crux of this right here. Interpretation, discussion, and conclusion. The Lachish series is found to plot nearest to the Maghreb and East series, both those who plot nearer to the Romano-British groups than any other in the series. Now, this is important to know, and I won't be able to go into this presentation for the sake of time, but when you deal with the Romano-British people, you have a lot of ancestry of sub-Saharan Africans in that region. And when you deal with these discriminant cranial functions, he clearly states, it should be in the next slide. Oh, I passed it up, but oh well. He clearly states in here that that there is a clear link to the Romano-British, and that they're also that these skulls that are found in Lachish Tomb 120, which is the only known Israelite burial site that they have, Lachish Tomb 120 from that war with the Assyrians. You see in that right there that they have those cranials that are in between sub-Saharan African and European, which means they are admixed people, which makes sense. Okay, let's move along. All right, right here. The Lachish remains represent one of the best preserved and the largest samples of Middle Eastern crania from any period, with an equal distribution of sexes present. Indeed.
1 minute remaining.
Oh, thank you. Then I'm going to skip over to the other side, towards the bottom. Right? It pretty much talks about the Wormian bones that are found in the Lamdoodle Sutra of the Lachish, and 64% of them, and 7 out of 10 Hellenistic groups have these Wormian bones. And in the third round, I'll move on to the DNA. You're right there.
All right. It sounds like to me this brother is saying that some of the Igbo, some of the Yoruba is our people. You know what I'm saying? That's what it sounds like to me. It sounds like this brother saying I can show you some of the connections. He just go, hey, to really get my vote, he just got to bring it on home in the third round. Well, God dang it, he's looking pretty good with what he just brought out. Udo, you got some explaining to do, brother, because this brother has brought out some Takara. I can't pronounce it. Takara figurines. You know what I'm saying? He done brought out all kinds of stuff.
Well, listen, man, you're dealing with agriculture, right? You're dealing with cultural expression that you can find in antiquity and you can find in modern day time. It's very important, man. I hope you judges also are paying very close attention, man, because we don't want none of this information to go over your head, man. This is thorough and informative, right? So I'm excited to see what the brother has to say in response, man.
There you go.
Yeah, hold up.
Hey, your time starts as soon as you get to talking, brother.
Yeah, hold on.
Okay.
You got it, 7,000?
Yeah, I got the time.
All right, water.
Hold on. Oh,
Hey, I want to congratulate Shabar for moving on to the next round. I mean, you shot a general, my fault. And congratulations to the young brother Shabar for putting up a good fight.
All right. Oh, I'm sorry. All right, here we go. Here we go.
I was looking for these notes I had real quick on what he was saying. I was writing down, but we're just gonna run with this. Now I'm gonna start off with this right here because he's speaking about the Yoruba people and stuff like, and he's trying to come at it at a couple different angles, and he's trying to cover himself. And the way he's trying to cover himself is how he speaks about this so-called, you know what I'm saying, this oral history of this migration of Jews, you know, into West Africa, so-called around the 6th century BC, and he's relating that to the iron smelting that he claims started in around that time. Now, the problem with that is the iron smelting techniques that were used in West Africa were not the same techniques that were used outside of Africa. And so that's going to be real big. Him having to try to explain that. You know what I'm saying? It's people had different ways of doing stuff, and so when you have somebody who's doing something different, you know what I'm saying, somewhere in a different part of the continent, you know what I'm saying, it's always it's a flag. But he comes at it. He also comes at it from before a 600 BC, and this is how he covers himself. And there would really be no point of emphasizing the 600 BC when he's trying to cover himself about deeper roots far beyond that in Nigeria and West and Central Africa and the such. You know, he's not really sure if he wants to go to 600 BC or the more ancient route, but he's trying to tell you that culture like this here from the Yoruba, which a lot of African Americans descend from this Yoruba tradition. He's trying to tell you that they were already influenced, you know what I'm saying, heavily influenced by Hebrews. Definitely, I mean, this right here, this sculpture, this was made, you know what I'm saying, this is post-colonial right here. So this ain't necessarily ancient. But I mean, he don't know whether to make up his mind to tell you if this is Hebrew influenced or not. But he'll cherry pick certain things like certain gods, right? And use those certain gods, like, you know what I'm saying? Some people will say this right here is a representation of a god, you know what I'm saying? And curious enough, it is a god that's associated with metallurgy, you know what I'm saying? And it's a god associated with with um with the mountains and thunder and lightning, right? And let me pull out my book because there's somebody that speaks upon this. I mean, if you go and get this book right here, I mean, this is a great book to have. I mean, because it talks about, I mean, I wish I could share my screen so I could have all the, man, I had so much that I wanted to share that I just can't show, but I posted some of the links, but I didn't post all the peer reviews. But here in this book, like it talks about, these cultures, you know, and it goes deep into burial practices. It goes into the construction of houses, and it goes into art, and it goes into religion and spirituality and you know, so much. I mean, just so much, right? I mean, there is so much, you know. But the thing is, there's no Hebrew influence on this. There might be correlations, but there's no Hebrew influence on this right here. Otherwise, you would have to accept something like this, and this would have to be less scarier for some people, especially those who are very full of idols and stuff like that. I mean, you to claim that this is a part of Hebrew culture and part of Hebrew people. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's a big stretch, you know, and also it's one thing to claim something as cultural, you know what I'm saying, versus, you know, being blood and bones, you know what I'm saying? And so people can take on cultural practices, and people can even learn ways from other people, right? But we're not really necessarily even concerned about whether or not there was a cultural fusion, you know, which there wasn't. There's no Hebrew influence on this. I'm sorry. And there was no ancient influence on any Hebrew
on West African, or let's say Yoruba specifically, I would like to see the Yoruba, the piece of the Yoruba that was influenced and something prior to it that its claim is coming from. You know, we jump to something like this from the Cameroons. This is a this would be given out, right, to the field generals in the grasslands in Cameroon. It's an honor sword. It's not a sword used in battle. It's a sword that the Lord would give out, not in the sense of a god, but in the sense of position and rank. It would be given out to the different vassals in a sense, right? And so, I mean, there is no. I mean, you want to say, oh, a star. I see a star, and what you're gonna run and how do you equate this stuff to Hebrewism? You know, or what is the actual artifacts that you're claiming are Hebrew? Are you claiming that this is from Hebrew people, from Hebrew culture? You know what I'm saying? When you go like this and you look at some Mali stuff like that, I mean, it's just not no Hebrew in that. Those our brothers were not Hebrew. You know what I'm saying? And I want to now I want to go in. I want to go into something else with this metallurgy. And we're gonna get in. We're gonna get into something right now. I'm gonna pull up. Let me pull this up. Bear with me real quick because this metallurgy thing is interesting. And then I want to start to get closer to getting into more ancient times, right? And seeing about these Hebrews in the ancient times. And so bear with me real quick. And so we're gonna look at this right here. I wanted to pull up, right, this peer-reviewed article by Nissam Amzalag, and I believe I posted the abstract of this to the brother or in the chat, and it's talking about Yahweh, the Canaanite god of metallurgy, right? And let me just read the abstract real quick. The abstract says in antiquity, southeastern Canaan was a very important center for copper smelting. While it was likely that there existed a patron deity of metallurgy, the identity of the Canaanite god of smelting remains unknown. Although some biblical writings suggest the South Canaanite origin of Yahweh, no details are provided concerning his worship prior to him becoming the God of Israel. But this study explores whether Yahweh was formerly the Canaanite god of metallurgy. The following observations corroborate this hypothesis: that Yahweh was worshipped by the Edomites, and especially by the Kenites, a small tribe regarded as the Canaanite smelters. Number two, the Israel cult of Yahweh was associated with copper and with a bronze serpent, a typical symbol of metallurgy, right? The melting of copper is considered in Exodus 4 as a specific sign of Yahweh, right? Number four, a parallel exists between Yahweh and the god of metallurgy worshipped in Egypt, as in Ptah, Mesopotamia as Ea Enki, and Elam, also known as Napir, all of them being a mysterious lonely deity. Number five, fighting the other gods is common to Yahwism and to the ancient metallurgy traditions. This data suggests that before coming publicly worshipped in Israel, Yahweh was formerly the god of the Canaanite guild of metallurgists. All right, and I mean, I can post all of this so you can get through it, but I'm gonna jump to the conclusions because he's talking about metallurgy, but he doesn't know anything about the origins of this, you know, in the Near East. And I wish I could share my screen so I could pull up, you know, some of these ancient artifacts and depictions and stuff like that before we get back into the dealing with the patriarch bloodlines and stuff. But the conclusion of this paper, which what's in the middle of it can be expressed further, but the paper does, it reveals a strong parallel existing between Yahweh, as described in some biblical writings, which I'm going to go over, and the gods of metallurgy known from antiquity. You know,
2 minutes remaining.
hello?
2
You said what?
minutes remaining. 2 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 minutes Go ahead, brother. You got 2 more minutes.
Look like he dropped off, man.
Oh no! All right, all right. Well, the main thing I got out what he was talking about. He said he need to see some kind of proof, some kind of substance, some kind of artifacts showing uh, Hebrew Israelite culture. I guess over in West Africa. That's what I got from most of that. He started comparing some of his artifacts with giving the history of those artifacts, and he's saying that he can tell you the history behind those artifacts, but he hasn't seen any artifacts that has anything to do with Hebrew Israelites or any influence by it. That's what he's asking, at least on that part.
Right.
All right, go ahead, man. Hopefully, the brother can get back on, man. He had 2 minutes remaining.
If he come back, he can get his claim his 2 minutes.
Right. Okay.
And even if I'm in the middle, he can claim it.
So you want to go ahead? Okay, this is the last and final round. This is James' third round. And then we're gonna get to the question and answer, and then we're gonna go to the judge. But I hope he come back. And one thing, it looks it's hard to get in front of the camera and do presentations. So let's encourage some of the newer brothers and the younger brothers that's getting in front of the camera. Sometimes very first time I got in front of the camera, I wasn't the greatest, I wasn't the best, but you just keep coming back and you only get better. You know what I'm saying? But hopefully he can work out his technical difficulties. We can continue close out the show. Go ahead, Yerma.
All right, man. So if the brother, we'll just add 2 minutes to his last and final round.
All right.
If he comes back, and we're gonna let James go ahead and close out with his final round. And hopefully the brother will be back, man. He still ain't jumped back in yet, man. So we go ahead and let James knock out his last and final round. Are you ready, bro?
Yeah, just let me know what my screen sharing.
All right. It's not sharing yet. Try again.
Your time will start when you start talking. I'll put you going on your time, brother.
All right, it ain't a big deal. This last one ain't got many images to show, so I can just go through it without it. But this right here is where we bring it home at. All right, we're gonna bring it home in the third round with DNA. This is what the brother say he wanted, and that's what I'm gonna get a brother. DNA. Now my screen still gotta load up here, but while it's loading up, I'm gonna talk about some things that the brother went over. I agree with him. The techniques are different because when you amalgamate with people, you take the best of what you got and the best of what they got, and you mix it together and you come up with something new. That's what happens with amalgamation. His post-colonial artifacts he got from the garage sale don't mean nothing in this debate. I don't see why he went through showing all them like they were some ancient artifacts that was supposed to be in comparison with the 2 ancient artifacts I was showing. He got to understand. I can't show you everything about the culture. I got 15 minutes around. You know what I'm saying? I can't go through everything, but I'm gonna hit the key things that I think will make it good for the people to see and make it stand out. And I don't have to accept my ancestors' idolatry, even if they had something to do with making those things. If they're supposed to be worshipped as God, I don't have to accept that at all. I can learn to do better. That's what we're called to do better than our ancestors. And also amalgamation. I talked to him about there being 13 indigenous tribes before the Israelites even came there. So it is an amalgamation. The Israelites are the smallest amongst the population there. So I just really didn't get his argument. But on to the next source. This right here is from an article online. Anyone can look it up, and it says DNA. It says DNA says Jews are a race. It ain't no J marker either, but it say that Jews are a race. And I'm gonna read this right here. Jews exhibit, he writes, a distinctive genetic signature. Considering that the Nazis tried to exterminate Jews based on their supposed racial distinctiveness, such a conclusion might be a cause for concern. But Oster says that as central to the Jewish identity, for most of the 3,000-year history of the Jewish people, the notion of what came to be known as Jewish exceptionalism was a hardly controversial. Because of our history of in-marriage and cultural isolation imposed and self-selected, Jews were considered by Gentiles and usually referred to them as a race. Scholars from Josephus to this Israeli proudly proclaim their membership in the tribe. All right. I'm gonna read this part right here. The same article: a people, a religion, or both. In Judaism, is Judaism a people or a religion or both? The belief that Jews may be psychologically and physically distinct remains a controversial fixture in the Gentile and Jewish consciousness. Ostir places himself directly in the line of fire. He writes, the term race carries nefarious associations of inferiority and rank of people. Anything that marks Jews as essentially different runs a risk of stirring up either anti-Semitism or philo-Semitism. But that doesn't mean we can ignore the factual reality of what he calls the biological basis for Jewishness and Jewish genetics. Accordingly, the distinctiveness of Jews is fraught with peril. But we must grapple with the hard evidence of human differences if we seek to understand the new age of genetics. All right, this article I'm reading from is called Population Genetics Reveals Shared Ancestry. DNA links modern European Middle Easterners to sub-Saharan Africans. All right. In a paper titled The History of African Gene Flow into Southern European Levantines and Jews, published by PLOS Genetics, Associate Professor of Genetics David Reich and his colleagues investigate the portion of sub-Saharan African ancestry present in various populations in Western Eurasia, defined as a geographic area spanning modern Europe and the Near East. While previous studies have established that such shared ancestry exists, they have not indicated to what degree or how far back the mixing of the populations can be traced. Analyzing publicly available genetic data from 40 population compromised North Africa, Middle Eastern, and Central Asians. Pretty much, let me get to the root of it. Morjani traced genetic ancestry with a method called roll-off. All right. Morjani used the technique to examine the genomes of modern West Eurasian populations and find signatures of sub-Saharan African ancestry. She did this by looking for chromosomal segments in Western Eurasian DNA that closely matched those of sub-Saharan Africans. By plotting the distribution of these segments and estimating their rate of genetic decay, Reich's labs was able to determine the portion of African genetic ancestry still present and to infer approximately when the West Eurasian and sub-Saharan African populations mixed. The genetic decay happens very slow. So today, thousands of years later, there is enough evidence for us to estimate the date of the population mixture. For example, the mixing of African and Southern European population coincides with the event of the Roman Empire and Arab migrations. The older mixture, which goes back to the Romano-British, the older mixture date among African and Jewish populations are consistent with the events. This is important. The events in biblical times, such as the Jewish diaspora that occurred in the 8th and 6th century BCE. This means right here in this article is telling you that the Jews that existed in pre-exilic Israel were admixed with sub-Saharan African ancestry. So can't nobody in here right now tell us that this article is wrong unless they're going to bring up an article that supersedes it, and one don't exist. I've looked. All right. It says Reich was surprised to see any level of shared ancestry between Ashkenazi and non-Ashkenazi Jews. I've never been convinced they were actually related to each other, Reich says, but now he concludes that his lab's findings have significant cultural and genetic implications. Population boundaries that many people think are impenetrable are in fact not that way. All right, this right here is called Genes Tell the Tale of Jewish Ties to Africa. This was published in Forward magazine by Gianna Palmer in August 2nd, 2011, talking about the same article. Now, a new scientific paper offers a genetic timeline that could support these biblical tales. The paper builds a new study published late last summer that were the first to use genome-wide analysis to trace the history of the Jewish people through DNA. It demonstrated that there was a biological basis for Jewishness, said Dr. Ostura, director of the Human Genetics Program at the New York University School of Medicine, who led this study. Among the findings, Ostura paper indicates that Jews have African ancestry. This is the least common denominator between all these Jewish populations, is sub-Saharan African ancestry, as observed that an observation that David Reich, associate professor at the genetics at Harvard Medical School, and his colleagues decided to further explore. Let me move forward here. Same stuff pretty much. All right, right here. This is the key thing. The first line here, right here under it says population in the first column. All right, we're gonna move over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 columns where it says West African ancestry proportion using structure. The first one there, it says African Americans. So this is talking about the proportion of DNA they're talking about that we have within ourselves as a whole. 77.2% of African Americans, which is 2/3, more than 2/3 of African Americans carry this DNA. So this is a direct genetic link to the pre-exilic Israelites. There's no way to get around that. But let's see, going into the actual article they're talking about, the history of African gene flow into Southern Europeans, Levant, and the Jews. And we see that they use HapMap3 for sub-Saharan African ancestors. That's Ibadan. That's in Nigeria, and it's the Yoruba of the Oyo state. That is where that DNA come from. So this brother can't never come on here and say that there ain't no genetic link. Can't nobody ever say to Israel again that we don't have a genetic link to our ancestors. They out they mind. All right, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen now because I'm done with my presentation. But how much time I got left?
Brother, you got 5 more minutes to go, man.
Oh, good. I got 5 minutes. That means I can talk for a minute. Now, as everybody can see, man, this brother here had what, one source? The whole debate? How you come to a debate with one source? Even if you don't have a presentation, you can read off the title. You know, you don't come to the debate with no sources, man. Also, man, like I said earlier, this man came with a garage sale items, trying to put them off to the people as if we should be looking for me to put something that compared to some post-colonial, when the white man got there and was stealing all their artifacts. That's what he want me to compare it to, not the ancient times that I'm talking about, during 900 to 600 BCE. But like I said, I brought source after source after source. I wanted this debate to be about sources, not about our opinions, not about how we feel, but about what we can prove. Because that's what that's what we about, what we can prove, not about what we can talk about. But that boy came with rhetoric, nothing but rhetoric. And you don't disprove scholarship with rhetoric. You disprove it with facts. I mean, the brother was acting like he didn't understand what amalgamation was. Again, if it's me and a small clan of us coming to be among 13 indigenous tribes, then eventually their indigenous ways are going to overtake us because they just outnumber us and we become one nation. That's just common sense. But as you can see, even in the stories, they talk about how distinct people worship this God. Distinct people worship that God. That's for a reason, because they say it's a lineal descent that's involved with that. So again, I've shown and proved with history that we had Israelites that come after the Assyrian exile and during the Assyrian conquest of Lachish. I even showed, which I couldn't go deep into, cranials with the Wormian bones, which Wormian bones are only found amongst Nigerians and Indians in the old world, East Indians in the old world. And the genetic link that I just put up right now shows that it connects them to sub-Saharan Africans. So, I mean, pretty much from a scholarly perspective, it's case closed. And if the brothers come back, he can go ahead and take the floor because I yield my mic. And y'all have a good night. All praises.
Hey. Sound like James Cassel got the shovel out.
How long other dudes got before
Are you back? Okay, all right. The brother made it back. Hey, he was
Oh,
about to
all
close
right.
the casket. Go ahead, brother Udo. You got 2 minutes.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, he really just killed himself. He just killed himself. You guys can rewind what he said. Listen to it. You know, I mean, the the thing is, like I said, he's trying to come at it from so many different angles. He don't know which way to stay from it. He don't know whether West Africans gave gave Hebrews DNA? Did Hebrews give West Africans DNA? Where is the DNA? Well, my question soon is, I mean, when we get to the question round, is going to be which of the patriarchs' DNA was extracted, right? But when he's speaking about this so-called DNA connection between blacks and Hebrews, he's really just twisted information. All right. I mean, the thing is, I have pulled up multiple sources, and I have another source right now, right, that's titled "Ancient DNA from West Africa Adds to the Picture of Humans' Rise," right, and this is by Carl Zimmer, and this is dealing with the Shem Laka rock shelter in Cameroon, right, where they found an 8,000-year-old boy's remains discovered, right, and they found some other children born in 5,000 BC. And one of the misconceptions that's been going on for a while is that you know East Africa, I'm saying as the cradle, as the oldest example of human bones and DNA and all this other stuff. And as you read in this article and others, you can see that that's just wrong, right? He's talking about these so-called Jewish people. Now, mind you, it, he he basically sometimes he equates all people of the Near East as being Hebrews, even whites. I mean, he just told you that Hebrews are mixed with whites and Europe's and Africans. You can rewind that. He just told you that. You know what I'm saying? Then he goes to tell you that these mixed people, you know what I'm saying? When he was speaking about he speaks about this amalgamation in all these places. And he gives
30 seconds remaining.
You know what I'm saying, ancestry into this Hebrew culture, you know what I'm saying? But like in this article points out, you know what I'm saying, the reason why these individuals from outside of Africa have African DNA in them is because human life started in Africa. And there's much debate going on right now on whether the first humans came from East Africa or other places like the Cameroon, right? And so you go into this paper, listen, and it speaks about this. It talks about these traces of remaining DNA and living Africans. And I mean, some people might be familiar with the Perry gene, you know what I'm saying, and all that, and linking it to West Africans, but but this isn't something that was introduced and given to West Africans during the 6th century. We're talking about genes that was in Africa, you know, for thousands of years. And like
And time.
my
He should still have his he had 2 minutes and his 15, right?
This
Yeah.
2 minutes over with. Hold up. Now, what we gonna do right here, Udo? You went on. You finished out your part of the round pretty strong. Now, what we gonna do? We gonna do like we did the last debate where the brothers kind of went back and forth for a little bit.
Oh, Uso ain't get his third. He ain't get his third.
Yeah, he got to get his third. He only got 2 minutes of his second. He still got to get his third.
Yeah. Yeah, he still
We
got
got a
his
whole
third.
other 15 minutes ago.
Word.
Yeah, he only used 2 minutes just there.
Yeah, that was the 2 minutes off his last round.
Oh, I thought he
yeah,
went first. I thought he only had 2 minutes left of his
Nah, he
first
got whole
round.
15. He got whole 15, the bottom of the third.
Oh, you got a whole
I was gonna
15.
say, damn, I was gonna say, man, damn, that was fast.
Oh, my fault. Okay, you got a whole 15 left. All
Yeah, he
right,
had to.
brother.
Yeah,
Go ahead. My fault.
yeah. It just so okay. It then so I wanna get to this. this other article. You know what I'm saying? This other article right here. This was research done by Iadon Harney and Hilla May and David Wright. You know what I'm saying? I think he even mentioned this dude. He even mentioned this Wright dude. But right here it talks about the ancient DNA from the Chalcolithic Israel, revealing the role of population mixture and cultural transformation. Now, what is going on here? Well, what do we have in the Peking cave? You know what I'm saying? We have ancient DNA here from people in around the time of Israel, but we don't have any patriarchs to link this to, and we don't have any African Americans to link this to either. But we do have more ancient genomes, right, from Africa that these people do hold. But the construction of these people's DNA, it turns out, right, it doesn't reflect the affinity with people on West Africa. It reflects the affinity with people in the Near East, from the Anatolia, from the Iran, from the Levant, right? I mean, here's the article right here. You know, this is one of the dudes that he quoted. He quoted right. You know, and Lazaridius is another one. You know, who speaks about this. You know, population at the site of Ain Gazal Jordan, right? And so, I mean, I just don't understand why he's trying to twist and turn facts. You know, he's trying to twist and turn facts to uphold his opinion, right? But if we look at more information, right? Because we haven't spoken too much about the African Americans. I mean, we know. I mean, here's another article. You know, here's an article by Michael Wright, and it speaks on how slavery changed the DNA of African Americans, right? And it talks about how the genetic makeup of African Americans here in America. You know, there's no ties to African American DNA, right? To them being in ancient Israel, but there is ties of people are outside of Africa, who are outside of Africa anciently. You know what I'm saying? Who had older DNA. You know what I'm saying, from Africa, because it's common belief. I mean, it's commonly accepted now that life started in Africa, right? So that is how these people share these some ancient ancestry from Africa. I mean, I mean, everyone shares this ancient ancestry from Africa. This ancient ancestry from Africa that everyone shares, and you can look at this article by Michael Wright. I believe I posted a list of different articles. I posted some peer reviews in the chat that one of the brothers was going to supposed to be posting up some of my stuff. But I mean, it's there. I mean, I've named several. I've
And
sourced
I
several
got
things.
whatever
I
you
mean,
need, man. Whatever you want me to show, I can show it, bro.
yeah. I mean, I mean, is there a way to just post it all? Because I didn't even get to post everything. But I mean, I guess since you a lot, is there a way to just post it on something so someone can see talking or whatever? Even just seeing some of the headlines of the stuff I'm posting, so people just, you know, I mentioned I do try to say I only had one source, but I know I spoke on several things on my phone, and I pulled out a book, and I mean, I got a couple more books here we can go through, and I got, you know, peer reviews and all kinds of stuff. I went through peer reviews, I went through articles, and I went through a library based in New York. I mean, he's really trying to, you know what I'm saying, pull a wrench right here. But back to this. But I advise people to come check this article written by Michael White, which I did give to my brother that if you can post it for me, as well as the other ones. And it speaks about the ancestry of African Americans. It speaks about how, you know, their dealings with Europeans changed changed their DNA and genetics. But I mean, the brother, I mean, earlier he was all. I mean, for him, it's a done deal because it wouldn't even matter because for him, the white folks is Hebrew Israelites too, you know, or what mixed in to become Hebrew Israelites is what he said. You know what I'm saying? But I just I just I didn't see no DNA extraction. There's never been any DNA extraction from any patriarch. There's been DNA extracted from various groups of people that were buried in the land, right, from ancient times to more modern. But there's there's only his only way to try to string it is to reverse who gave who what genes and stuff like that. I showed you. If you go look at these articles, it explains that these people that were outside Africa, right? They already had genes that were older in Africa, and like we went past the last article we're at, where it's talking about this ancient genome from Cameroon, and it talks about these bones and genomes from outside of the East Africa, because that was once the belief was that East Africa was older. You know what I'm saying? But I posted the article. Go to that article I was speaking about and go look at it. And it's talking about this ghost DNA. It's talking about this ancient DNA. Some people are familiar. Some people are familiar with Perry's Y DNA, and it talks about that in one of the articles I already posted on the the OOA. You know what I'm saying? Because they found out they have evidence that I've already shown, and that more can be cited, that shows you the oldest human remains and oldest DNA being outside of East Africa and stuff like that. But here I want to jump to this real quick. I want to jump to something else. Oh shit! Can y'all hear me? My phone's frozen. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, we hear you.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, hold on. I'm trying to jump to this other. I'm trying to jump to this other source real quick. My phone's frozen. Wait a minute. Give me a second. Hmm. Okay. Well, I'm struggling to get there. I just want to. I just some more. Yeah. Get this shit to work. Man, I'm having technical difficulties trying to get to this next slide. Hold up, real quick. There was. Lord, just my shit's frozen. But some more sources where people can look at a study that was done by Antonio Salas titled "Charting the Ancestry of African Americans," and you can find that by just putting in Antonio Salas 2004. Now, there's some other people that were on that research with him, like Angel Carcedo and Martin Rico. But I mean, it's just this is more evidence that points towards
Hey, look, bro, I'm about to share my
you
screen.
know
Just tell me what you want me to
the
pull
actual
up, all
roots of
right?
African American ancestry, being in
You hear me, Udo?
West Africa, Central Africa, from the ancient perspective, right? ScienceMag.org has a article they did on talks about the ancient DNA reveals fate of the mysterious Canaanites by Lizzie Wade.
6 minutes
Something else
remaining.
that you got to go
Udo,
check out. It's more evidence supporting my claim, right?
Udo, did you hear me, bro?
Kansas State Historical Society got a ton of stuff
Damn,
online,
can nobody hear me?
databases
Udo,
that
yeah,
people
I
can
hear you,
use,
bro.
right?
Udo.
And it speaks about
Udo,
a lot of local stuff. It's got some ancient stuff
Let
in
him
there
know.
too, but that's going back, getting us back to the Ford and the prophet Cherry and the Black Jews and the UNIA and their influence on the UNIA and all that. You know what I'm saying? Going back to the Universal Convention of 1920. It was a big debate between Brother Ford and Garvey and all these people. And I go back to this because this is really the center of it. Because this was the debate, was the return to Judaism, which Ford was laying out, right? I say that to show that, just to go back towards this, or back in time where this pretty much all started, where these brothers was creating this black nationalism, right? There is no patriotic DNA to link to African Americans. You know, there's DNA, ancient DNA in Africa to link to people outside of Africa, to link to everyone outside of Africa. But there is no bloodline patriotic DNA that you can link to African Americans. You know, you gotta go study Brother Cherry. You know what I'm saying? I gave you the other site earlier, the New York Public Library and the Schomburg Research Center. You know, there's plenty of stuff. I was trying to pull it up.
Hey, Udo, can you hear me, bro?
I can't get anything online right now, but Church of Gods and Saints, they have their own website. They speak about these people. You go and look at these churches, these Hebrew churches, the synagogues, and places of worship that are getting established. They speak about this history. You know what I'm saying? And so, oh, is this it right here? Okay, boom, I got in. Yeah, okay.
Everybody see, I tried to pull it up the screen for that brother, but for some reason he can't hear my voice.
Another
Right.
site right here. If I can get this to finish loading up, now that my thing's on.
Yeah, you gonna have to inbox him out.
Man, my internet is just real. I wonder if can y'all hear me? My internet's lagging.
Yeah, you can hear us.
He got 3 minutes, man.
Bro, you can't hear us.
Man, what the fuck, man?
Brother had 3 minutes remaining.
Hey man, look like we're gonna have to move on, man.
Man, let's end this shit now.
Wait a minute.
I'm sorry, y'all. I know I'm not supposed to do that, man, but damn, man, come on.
Man.
That's
All right.
wow, crazy.
I gotta go watch some ESPN, man. This nigga put us to sleep, man. You know who won this damn debate. Let's go, man. Shit.
Well, all right, come on. Let's.
This was a Mike Tyson second round knockout, man. Come on.
All right, man. Damn, man. Well, let's hit the judges. You wanted the judge. You can go first with your judges.
You damn right one of the goddamn judges, man. I ain't gonna lie. Look, I ain't gonna hold you. I was looking for the first man to change my opposite opinion about what I believe. I swear to God, I came on here with full power that this man was gonna convince me that the studies that we got on Israel was bullshit, and I was gonna have to go back to the laboratory, and all he did was put me the fuck to sleep. So James, you kicked this nigga ass.
Hey,
you
man,
got my thumbs up.
bro. We gotta keep it clean, bro. Come on, man.
All right. I'm sorry, fam. I'm sorry. PG-13, man.
Yeah, this is a family show, man. Come on.
Damn.
All right. So one vote goes to James Cassel.
And I'm gonna be honest though, man. All profanity aside, the fact that James, one thing I'm gonna tell the brother, I don't know if this is his first debate, but I'm gonna tell him if you're gonna ever come on the Lions Den, man, you gotta be prepared. You gotta have a presentation, some type of platform. But James did bring his sources, you know, even though he didn't go into all of them, but he still brought his PowerPoint, his sources, and he read it. You can't just be on a smartphone reading rhetoric and just saying, okay, I don't agree, so this is where my standpoint is. So I just want to clarify without the joking. That's why I agree with, I went with James, not only because of, you know, me being a goofball, but because the fact that James actually had a presentation and showed information and sources of Paleo Hebrew, giving different archaeology, different scientific evidence, and giving you know, different sources of scholars that provided evidence of who we are. So I just want to put that out there.
All right, you sharp, Daquan.
Hey, hold up, man. Before we get him, I want the audience that's watching, because we got a lot of people watching, man. A lot of people tuning in right now, man. I want the audience watching. I want you to vote number 1 for James Cassel, the number 1 contender in the Lions Den, and number 2 for our dear brother Udo. Right, number 2 for Udo, number 1 for James Cassel. All right, we want to hear you, family. You out there watching? All right, go ahead, 7,000.
Yeah. Like I was saying, the next judge we have to have is Brother Thot. And then we also got one more judge who has to call in.
Yeah.
So let's go with Brother Thot. Go ahead, man.
Yeah, I gave it to Jason. He had the overwhelming evidence. Know what I mean? I probably could have even went and took what the other brother was saying if he was sourcing it while he was reading it. He just had too much filler. He wasn't giving enough information.
Who is Jason?
Ain't that the brother name?
No, James.
Oh, James. Yeah, my bad.
Whatever worked for you.
Nah. No disrespect, bro. No, I'll give it to James though. He definitely came with hella information. You know what I mean? Like too much information for this one, if you ask me. Like he already had it in the bag first round. Shit.
All right. So I mean, even so, two. That's 2-0. Did the other brother call in? Jeremiah.
Brother Terry? Man, Brother Terry, man, go ahead and make the call, brother, so we can get your vote. Let me try to see if I guess I'll call him, man.
Right, but as you can see, if he's already won the majority of the votes, so basically, James Cassel will be moving on to the second round of the tournament. You know what I'm saying? Hopefully, the other brother call in. You know, I would congratulate James personally. Hold on for a minute, brother. So yeah, congratulations, James. But I still like to hear the other judges. You know, the other judge what he had to say. But like I say,
congratulations, bro.
Right.
All praises.
Hopefully,
congratulations,
hopefully, the next round the debates will get a little bit more tougher for each. You know, some of these topics to me is kind of. You know, it is what it is. Y'all, if you get
I can say something real quick, man, to brother Udo. Know what I mean? Like no disrespect, know what I mean, all the laugh fun and games or whatever, know what I mean? Like we want you to come back, know what I mean, get your stuff together. Just be more prepared next time.
Right.
That's what I was telling brother, man. If you're gonna come in the Lions Den, man, you're gonna get folked up. So you gotta be prepared. You gotta be prepared, man. You know, next time try to bring a presentation, you know, have some better Wi-Fi. You know, I even told the brothers, you know, we know from when we first started this debate league on here, StreamYard is not good on an Android or a tablet. You gotta have a laptop and you gotta have some battery juice. You know what I mean? But, you know, like I said, man, it looked like it was his brother's first debate. So I know everybody, when they go in the ring the first time, they're not really ready. But, you know, for his next fight, you know, whenever it is, you know, just come a little bit more prepared.
Great advice, man. Like I said, we don't want to discourage, you know, the new people. I mean, it's a totally different monster when you're in front of the camera. A lot of people who never been in front of the camera, they don't know that. But it really is. It is. But like I say, we got some other brothers. Yashar, the general, has moved on today. We got James Cassel has moved on. We got King Seth has moved on. Brother Jihad has moved on. Brother Don has moved on. We get 2 more matches. We wait for the winner between Angel and Brother LP like Paul. And what's the other match, bro? We got one more match.
We got Judah Nazareth.
There you go. Judah Nazareth and Gabriel. So we'll be ready for the second round. We're gonna have a second round show with all the winners on one show together. And they're gonna talk about their matches with their opponents.
Hey man, look, we in a go home, man. 1 loss, right? You want to beat a man? You gotta beat the man. That's what we doing here in the Lions Den, man. Right? You get turned all the way up. Train your scholarship. Name of the league. Where's your source, man? Sports to the Lions Den. This is what we do here, man. Right? Shout out to all the judges, man. Right? Shout out to all the brothers that are doing the work behind the scenes. It's not easy managing 16 of the strongest male egos on planet Earth, okay? Right? It ain't easy, man. But look, we doing it for you. We doing it for the family. Why? This ain't a league about whether or not LeBron James is going to win another championship, whether or not what Tom Brady is going to do at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Hell no. We here to bring forth wisdom, knowledge, and understanding on a high level, man. So shout out to all the affiliates, man. 7,000. Any last words?
No, hey, let's just get ready, Rumble. Hey, tell them tomorrow what time the debate is tomorrow. Is it Monday? What time is tomorrow's debate?
7 o'clock.
Okay. And that's Judah Nazareth and Gabriel. And then Wednesday, we got one more in the first round. That's LP versus Angel Ramos. So other than that, hey, I'm out.
Yo, look, yo, family, hold on. Yo, look, we Don said that y'all might have to reconsider. He want Angel out.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, he got real bad.
Yeah, he got to meet up and he got to meet him in the tournament or after the tournament.
Y'all gotta go to the back chat, man. He said he want to take LP off there. He want Angels behind, y'all.
Yeah, well, he doing too much, man. You know what I'm saying?